Welcome to ALC students' very first virtual online life groups. I am so thankful that you have joined us tonight, and leaders, especially thankful for you for navigating Google Hangouts and figuring out how to make this work for all of our students. But I just want to jump on here and say, we are so thankful that you are all here. And if you don't know me, my name is Aubrey Moss and I am the lead student pastor. And our student team is so excited to be doing this with you. I also want to invite you to join us on Sunday mornings at live.alcpnw.com for streamed service online. Invite your families. We have services at 8:30, 10, and 11:30. And then also make sure you join us on Sunday nights at 7 p.m. live on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube on any one of those platforms, because we're gonna have some really fun stuff planned for you that night as well. But I just want to talk about the COVID-19 virus. We want to be open here. We want to be an environment where you guys can talk about anything. And we're realizing, and we're seeing on Instagram and when we hear from you students, that this has kind of been a very isolating time. Maybe you're stuck at home, we know that school is canceled, you can't come to in-person church, and so we want this to be a place where you can openly talk about that with each other and with your leader. So make sure that you take advantage of that. We don't need to hide from this. We're all dealing with it and we're in this together. So make sure that you talk about it. But I also want to tell you about something so much bigger than the COVID-19 virus, and that's our God. And the reason why you are here today, and the reason that I'm here, and the reason your leaders are willing to invest in you is because we truly believe that God is bigger than this. And we could be focusing on so many things right now that make us sad, that maybe make us depressed, and those are real things, and I don't want to discredit them. But what we would love to do through life groups, and what we're hoping happens, is that you are able to center your attention on Jesus and who He is, and how much He loves you, and how much He cares about you. And that's what this first series for life groups is going to be all about. It's about stuff Jesus did. And that's really important because everything He did is because He loved us, and because He wanted to be an example of how we should live our lives even right now. So first tonight we get to hear from our Happy Valley student pastor Laura Hall in just a minute. I just want to let you know personally that I love you guys too. I'm praying for you, our entire team is praying for you, and we know that together we will rise above this and that we'll be back in person before you know it. Love you guys. Hey students, my name is Laura Hall. I'm the Happy Valley student pastor, and we are so excited that you're here with us tonight. We are going to dive into a new series that's called Stuff Jesus Did. And what I think is going to be so amazing about this series is that we get to see the creative and awesome things that Jesus said during His time here on earth. These passages we're going to look at over the next few weeks will allow us to dive into some truths that we can apply to our lives here today. Now tonight we're going to start with John chapter 11, and we find Jesus having a conversation with two of His friends, Mary and Martha. Now earlier in this chapter, they've sent a message to Jesus that their brother Lazarus is sick. Now they've been friends with Jesus for a while, so they've seen Him travel around and heal people, and so they ask Him to come and see their brother who is sick. But by the time Jesus gets there, we read in verse 17, He was told that Lazarus had already been in his grave for 4 days. 4 days. Now, this isn't just 4 days since Lazarus was sick. This is 4 days since he died. Now, when Martha hears that Jesus is finally coming into the village, she goes out to meet Him. And she says in verse 21, "Lord, if only You had been here, my brother would not have died." Jesus, You weren't where I expected You to be. You weren't where I wanted You to be. Jesus, where were You? Have you ever felt like this? Have you ever felt like Jesus wasn't where you expected Him to be, wasn't where you asked Him to be? I know for me, I think of the time when I found out that my best friend from college who was living in Texas found out that she might get to move to Seattle. So she would be going from being 2,000 miles away, a 4 or 5 hour plane ride to see her, to just being a 3-hour drive up the road. And I prayed for this to happen. God, I want my friend to be closer. I want to be able to experience life with her again. But then came the day where she called and said that they were moving to Kansas instead, which, if you're doing the math, is a little bit further away than just a 3-hour drive up to Seattle. Or I think of the time when my mom's best friend, who was like family to me, was diagnosed with cancer for the 3rd time. She had fought so hard, she had been so faithful, and she had come through 2 other cancer diagnoses. And guys, I couldn't understand why this was happening. God, where are you in this? God, why can't I see you? Why aren't you where I expect you to be? This is how Martha feels. She has put her trust in Jesus. She has been following him. She is his friend, and she is asking him to show up. But he doesn't show up in the way she asked him to. But Jesus tells her in verse 23, "Your brother will rise again." And she thinks she knows exactly what he's referring to. Verse 24, she says, "Yes," Martha said, "he will rise again when everyone else rises at the last day." So she thinks that she has Jesus completely figured out. She thinks that she knows exactly what he's saying when he says that her brother will rise again. What she doesn't realize is that Jesus wants to take this expectation that she has and completely flip it on its head. Jesus isn't saying that Lazarus is going to rise in a distant time, sometime far off in the future. He's saying that he is going to rise again now. Martha is looking for a resurrection for her brother from a distant God in the distant future. But Jesus tells her something incredible. He says, "I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me will live even after dying." Martha, you don't have to wait for resurrection. You don't have to hope that one day in the future, Jesus is going to bring life to Lazarus again. Life is here, right in front of you. Now, her sister Mary was so upset with what had happened to her brother that she stayed behind. She couldn't bring herself to come out and meet Jesus when she heard that he was coming into the village. She stayed behind with her friends. But after Martha has her conversation with Jesus, she comes back and gets Mary and says, "Jesus wants to talk to you." So she comes out, and scripture says that she falls at his feet, and she too says, "Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died." And guys, do not miss this, because this is the most incredible response from Jesus. When Jesus saw her weeping and saw the other people wailing with her, a deep anger welled up within him, and he was deeply troubled. "Where have you put him?" he asked them. They told him, "Lord, come and see." Then Jesus wept. Guys, this rocks me to my core. When Jesus sees his friends, when he sees these people experiencing so much pain, so much sadness, he doesn't just acknowledge their pain. He doesn't just say, "I see you're feeling sad. I see that you're upset." He participates in their pain with them. He knows how this story is going to play out. He knows that there is a plan for Lazarus that doesn't end here, but he stops and he participates in their pain with them. Now Jesus approaches the tomb where Lazarus was buried, and he tells them to roll away the stone. And I love Martha's response to Jesus' request. She says, "But Martha, the dead man's sister, protested, 'Lord, he has been dead for 4 days. The smell will be terrible.'" I love that Martha is so practical in this. She's just reminding Jesus, like, "Hey, I don't know if you've smelled a dead person before, but it might kind of reek." She's reminding Jesus of the reality that she sees and soon thinks that she's going to smell. But Jesus reminds her again of who he says he is. He rolls away the stone, and Lazarus comes out, and death becomes life in Lazarus. So even though Jesus wasn't where Mary and Martha wanted him to be, even though Jesus wasn't where Mary and Martha expected him to be, even asked him to be, Jesus was still there. He was still working. Where are you looking for God to show up in your story? When we invite him into our pain, when we invite him to participate in the things that are making us sad, that are causing us hurt, he shows up. But like for Mary and Martha, he might not show up in the way that we expect or even the way that we ask. You see, my mom's best friend, she wasn't healed the way I expected her to be. But her testimony, the way that she lived her life, the way that she loved Jesus with everything she had, regardless of her circumstances, regardless of what was going on in her life, she brought so many people to Jesus. And because of her story, new life was born in so many people. With everything going on right now, it can be so easy to feel alone. I can't imagine how Mary and Martha must have been feeling between the time that they asked Jesus to come, watching their brother get sick, having to bury him, and then having Jesus finally show up. What a lonely time that must have been for them. Wondering, is he going to make it in time? Wondering, where is Jesus? When is he going to show up? How is he going to show up? And I don't know what this loneliness might look like for you right now. Maybe you've had something that you've really cared about and it's been canceled or postponed. Maybe you sit at home by yourself because you can't go to school, you can't hang out with your friends, and it can be so easy to let this isolation and loneliness just completely consume us. But what we have to remember is that in the midst of our loneliness, in the midst of our pain, Jesus is right there. He is right there next to us. He wants to come alongside us. He wants to experience our pain, and he wants to show up. We just have to invite him in. So we are going to move into a time of connecting with our life groups. Because guys, here's the good news. Even though we can't be with each other in person, we still get to do life together. How cool is that? So as you guys move into a time of discussion and connection in your Google Hangouts, I would just invite you, be real with each other. Let each other know what's going on. Pray for each other. Ask how you can come along and support each other throughout this next season. Because guys, we love you. We want to continue to connect with you. We want to make the gospel good news for you so that we can all go and make the gospel good news for each other. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Go ahead and head back to your life group discussions, and we'll see you guys next week.